Yeah, 5:30. And they're gonna give a presentation on the whole thing. Hey, James. Hey, John. So this, press that and the light goes on and they can hear you.
This is such an honor to sit in the big seats.
Right? But you know, the bad part about sitting in the big seats is, you know, the camera can actually be on you instead of hiding in the corner.
I see. I didn't think of that. Now I'm going to be more nervous. I wish you had not told me that,
But
Kathy.
luckily it's a subcommittee.
I just won't say anything.
All right. This week has already been
I know, huh?
feels like it should be Thursday.
I know. You ready, Mike?
I am ready.
Call the Technology Subcommittee meeting to order. Roll call.
Chairman Leahy.
Here.
Council Cirillo.
Here.
Council Noon.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you. So tonight we're going to continue our talk with the green, well, not so much green, but with the aggregation. We want it to be green, but, it will be. And tonight we have special guest Carol Odom she's the Executive Director at the Mass Climate Action Network. We also have Catherine Moses with us, Jay Mason, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Michaela.
Oh, okay, Michaela, yeah, I'm sorry. That's what happens when you get old. So why don't we start with your presentation, Carol, and see where we are. Thank you.
Great. So I apologize for the slides being a little bit small for you all. But basically, so as you mentioned, my name is Carol Oldham. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Climate Action Network. And we are a group that has chapters in cities and towns across Massachusetts. We work on the solutions side of climate change, so trying to help communities get the good stuff going. And we like aggregation for a bunch of the reasons that I'm going to tell you. We've helped several communities get green aggregation going, and including when I lived in Brookline and was on town meeting there. It was one of the first sort of significant green programs. Oh, okay. So as we all know, climate change is happening. It's happening here in Massachusetts. It's a real problem, not only on our coast, but in other places in Massachusetts. We are seeing a lot of climate-driven storms, climate-boosted droughts, major issues, and all right. And essentially, local action is really where the magic is. Cities and towns have always been the best place for climate action to start from. So we're very happy to be here talking to you guys in Lowell, and Lowell has obviously already made a strong commitment to be a part of the solution. You guys have made 100% by 2035 commitment. That really leads the state and the nation, so bravo to all of you. Green aggregation is a logical next step because it really helps you move towards that goal and stay a little bit ahead of the state, which is what you're going to have to do in order to meet that 100%. We always encourage folks when they're thinking about green aggregation programs to really focus on those Class 1 renewable energy credits, and one of the major reasons for that is that it creates jobs here in New England and gets us off of fossil fuels and onto clean energy. My arm is not long enough. So green aggregation, you all know this image on the left is sort of our current electricity supply. The idea is that on the right, that image represents green aggregation. So much of the system is unchanged except for where the electricity comes from. It's coming from a greener source. Just a few pieces of background. I understand that you guys have probably heard most of this, but utilities don't make energy anymore. They just get it to all of us so that we can turn our lights on. And it really, the reason that MCAN has been out in communities talking to folks about green aggregation is that it's a truly significant step that as a community lets you cut your climate pollution community-wide. So we get asked a lot about opt-up. What if we just do a green opt-up program? One of the things that I find with aggregation, and actually for me at home, it's no exception, it's very easy to get lost in the research. So you sort of start thinking about, oh, well, which company should I buy green energy from? And as an individual, it's very easy to get confused and end up doing nothing. And so what we find is that the default percentage is really where the magic is. And you know, there have been communities that have done contests with other communities. They've done door-to-door knocking. The opt-up percentage is still pretty low because people start doing the research and get confused. So we really encourage communities to think about their default option. And again, your 100% commitment means that you guys will need to go above and beyond the RPS. And just as a reminder, people can always opt out or opt down. So back to that RPS minimum. We love the sort of choice that households have, so you can opt out, which is relatively easy. People really do want to do the right thing, we find, but again, they get lost in the research. This way you can protect your customers and protect the climate. Massachusetts, there are a lot of communities that are doing aggregation. There are a lot of communities that are doing green aggregation, so you all would not be alone. A few success stories. Dedham has had for several years a 5% additional clean energy, which gives them a total of 19%. Brookline now has more than a year under their belt of 2 years of doing 25% additional clean energy for a total of 39%. And Newton has recently started their program with 46% additional clean energy, which means that 60% of their electricity supply is clean. These all work because of the default number. So again, they're not relying on people opting up. They're making sure that the base number that folks have is a really good number. And this is almost impossible for everybody to read. I'd be happy to send you guys the slides. But I wonder, do I have a laser pointer on here? My one like this at home has a laser pointer. So if you look at the two bolded lines, Brookline with their extra 25% Class 1 renewable energy is paying 11.09 cents per kilowatt hour. Newton with their 46% additional clean energy is paying 11.34 cents. So folks are getting really good prices for a lot of clean energy. And when I made this slide initially in January, I was paying in Boston, my Eversource basic rate was 13.588 cents. So in Newton and Brookline, they were getting a lot more clean energy and getting a much better price for it. In order to get to your 100% by 2050 commitment, Lowell will need to buy 45% by 2050, 45% additional clean energy. And that's because the state's current trajectory under the renewable portfolio standard will put the Commonwealth at 55% clean energy by 2050. So if you guys are doing an additional 45%, that gets you to 100%. As I mentioned, Newton is currently buying 46% additional clean energy, so they're actually beating where you guys will need to be, and they're paying 11.34 cents per kilowatt hour. So just a few closing thoughts. One of the things that the Department of Public Utilities does not like communities to do is make promises about prices. So I always encourage folks to focus on what you want to accomplish with the green energy, rather than having a very close-in focus on cost savings. That can end up being, as you saw from Brookline and Newton, that can be a side effect and a positive thing that ends up happening. But if it's the exclusive focus, then usually communities don't end up meeting their goals. And we encourage communities to do at least 5% additional. Again, I think for Lowell, probably something a little bit higher than that, because you guys have your long-term goal, would be really smart. And we do encourage folks to focus on Class 1 renewable energy, because it does create jobs in the region and get us off of dirty energy. I think that's it. That is it. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yes, so I have a question. So for Lowell to go to Class 1 renewables, say for example, we went whole hog and did the 45%. Is that something that's doable? Is that something that's possible?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Cirillo. The answer is we can do whatever the city would like us to do in terms of pricing things out. I had a handout that I had distributed to the members of the subcommittee. There's also a copy of a handout beside the podium on the chair, and this is what's called indicative pricing. And so what the indicative pricing shows, we priced out several different renewable options, and I gave you kind of a snapshot of what the cost would be versus the renewable portfolio standard. And one of the things that Carol had referenced is starting at 5% above RPS. And you can see that the cost above RPS is really negligible. It's 77 cents per kilowatt hour for each, or not per kilowatt hour, for your whole bill, for the average Lowellian. We have our consultant, they can price out whatever percentage of renewable content that you would like to see us commit to. That can be something that can give you options, but you can see as you increase, there's also a pricing on there for 50% more than required, which puts us around 21% renewable content. And so that increases the average Lowellian's bill about $7.66 per month. But it's, again, something that we can consider. One of the things we also discussed in the last subcommittee meeting, and that we're in the process of doing right now, is amending our aggregation program to allow for different types of rates. So you can have your basic opt-in rate, whatever you would like that to be. You can have an opt-down rate, which is just the RPS, and you can have an opt-up rate, which is 100% renewable. And we are happy to price in any of those percentages or whatever level and content you would like to see to benefit all Lowellians.
And so which of those options would be the default option?
Again, that's something that is up to the will of the city council and the manager. I know that, like Carol was talking about, there are some aggregations that make the default something higher than the renewable portfolio standard. Some aggregations start at the renewable portfolio standard and let you opt up. It would be whatever the city determines is in the best interest of its residents and businesses. Again, you can go with slightly higher than RPS, and you can, as Carol was talking about, you could increase that with each coming contract. You can start at a higher percentage now, but and I think that adding additional recs is a wonderful thing to help us continue to be a leader in this arena. I think it's a question of how do you add that, give people choices, and at what level you want to go to. But we can have anything priced into the next contract. And then, like I said, as we mend our aggregation plan, then allowing different options for something beyond whatever the default is.
Well, right now, we're at the base. So anything above the base is going to be an improvement. And if it's doable, or if it's possible, I don't see why we wouldn't go to the 45%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Catherine, remind me, what is our cost per kilowatt, and what is the current renewable content that we getting right now?
So our current contract has just the renewable portfolio standard offer, and I don't think it's. I think the rate was 13.65. Right. Previously, we had just been able to lower that. I don't know if it's in the current bills, but it's around 12.8, I think, is what the new lower cost is going to be, but I can verify that for you. But that, again, is just the renewable portfolio costs, and it's a product of the type of product that we had in our aggregation contract. And so the pricing that was provided to you assumes there is a fixed rate, and that I think that that's the best product going forward. And again, these are just sort of a snapshot of what the market is. The nice thing is, it's actually a pretty good market right now if you did want to increase renewable energy content. But again, it's a matter of what the city council would like to do in terms of impacting our residents, because our aggregation plan isn't amended now, whatever we go out to bid for, that's something that everybody within the aggregation would be opted into. And so if that's a higher renewable content and you don't think it impacts the residents too much, we can bid whatever you would like us to bid, but just keeping in mind that that is
the charge that you pass out to the council, the town in Massachusetts choosing green energy chart here. Carol mentioned Brookline and Newton. Those two towns pay less than we do, and yet having, in terms of Newton, you have 46% green energy. Carol, what did we do wrong? Can we do better?
That's a great question. Energy markets are extremely complicated, so I don't know what went wrong for your program.
Can I just say, it's a snapshot in time too, right?
Yeah.
So when we
Yeah.
entered into the contract 3 years ago, that must have been our best option for the contract at the time. But now,
Yeah,
we can do better.
there are better
So-
options available, I think, is what,
Yeah.
there are better options now.
Your response would be that there are better option, better deal out there as well, right? And we can get this deal that on the table right now. I mean that Newton and Brookline getting. Is that?
So the interesting thing about the way that these work is that the broker responds to your request for information, your request for a proposal. Mm-hmm. They won't give you exactly what Brookline got or exactly what Newton got. But I think given that a bunch of communities are doing this and are getting really great prices for it, that you are likely to get a better deal.
I would recommend it to you, then Catherine and the team, to go back to the broker Colonial Energy and say, look,
Yeah.
we want something better. Not only in term of cost, but also green energy, and we can have both. In this case, because look at the chart here, just understand a snapshot in time. But if you look at other cities and towns, that too is a snapshot in time, and they've probably been with the company for some time as well. So why not shop around and get a better deal in terms of price as well as green energy?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Noon. I do think that right now is an ideal time to look into the market, because I do think that from what I know about the markets, and I will disclose that I don't know it in depth the way that a lot of our experts do and our consultants do, but even from the snapshot that was provided for the indicative pricing, to me, that says that it's a great time to go into the market, and it's a great time to price energy. And if you did want to do additional renewable content, I think there's an opportunity in that. It's just, again, what level you would like us to bid at, and what we can do when we bid for the contract that will start in October is we can actually go through different percentages. We can bid in whatever percentages you would like us to get indicative pricing for, and then you can let your desires be known to the city manager and how you would like to factor in which level of default content we go to. But if we wanted to bid in at 5%, if you wanted to do a 45%, if you want to do 100%, or anything in between, we can bid in anything you'd like us to bid in.
Right. So our contract is up for renewal in October 2019. Is that correct?
Our supply contract
Yes.
will be changing in October 2019, yes.
So we have to start the process now, though, right?
Now would be the ideal time, and so ideally what would be great is if we come out of the subcommittee meeting and we have a general direction of what you would like us to put into that next bid, and then from there we can at least have options to lock in a good rate for the next contract.
Thank you, Mr.
Right.
Chairman.
From our conversation at the last meeting, you explained to us why it's better to stay with our broker now, but to tell him what we want. Right, so we're gonna leave that in your hands.
Yeah, I think staying with our current broker is good because, again, we can get pricing that really takes advantage of the market that we have right now. And again, we can price in whatever renewable content you want because the market is so favorable right now. I think we will get a better rate than what we currently have and the type of product that we're looking at. But if we're going to allow for choice within the aggregation and allowing people to opt up to a higher percentage of renewable content, or if they don't have as much of an interest in renewable content or more concerned with just managing their costs, then we have to amend our aggregation plan. We have to have a consultant to amend our aggregation plan because it's a very complex proceeding within the DPU. But I think I think we can do all of the above though. But I think if you start getting into a new consultant, then you have to break the contract. There are costs associated with that. There's time associated with that. But I do think that we can really come up with a win-win here for the people of Lowell.
Right, and that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for some cost savings. We're looking to go greener. We want options on what the different levels are. And what would you say, what's our timeline for this next contract? Like, so it comes up end of October, beginning of November. So when do you need to have this ready? Like, when are we gonna have a contract signed and then transfer into the new contract? Does that have to be done by September, October?
That's an excellent
August?
question. So the current supply contract, it ends September 30th, and so the new supply contract would start October 1st. And like Carol was mentioning, and I've mentioned a couple of times, your pricing is a product of the market, and the market conditions are favorable right now. I can't really definitively say how long that will be the case, or that we need to have kind of a drop dead date by this time to know exactly what we're
But
doing.
maybe by August, we should have everything lined up and ready to
I
go.
think even before August would
all right.
probably be more ideal. Like I said, we can bid in any percentage of renewable content that the council deems necessary, or that the city manager, if you would like to express your will to her.
Yeah.
But I think with the market conditions being what they are, I think taking advantage of the pricing within the market sooner rather than later would
Right.
be
Oh,
more
yeah.
advantageous.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilor Cirillo first. then.
Yes, thank you. Then I would like to put forth a motion that we bring to the city council. I think we should bring it forth as a motion to the city council, that I would like to see 45% clean energy, class 1 renewable.
But aren't we gonna give them, aren't we gonna give Catherine's office an opportunity to give us some choices and some information on whatever, I'm just saying for numbers, what 30% looks like, what 50% looks like, and what 80% looks like, something like that?
All right, so I'll
Yeah,
amend the
We wanna give you a
motion.
little bit of time to come back and show
to-
us what,
Well, why don't we have the motion be, have Catherine's office come to city council with options of 25%,
yeah, the.
35%, 45%, with class 1 renewables. I think that she can do that can you get that squared away as a motion to bring it?
I can get that for you. So just to clarify the motion, would you like something similar to what I gave you with indicative pricing, or would you like to get firm pricing from firms and have them bid in at the 25, 35, and 45% level?
Well, let's have firm pricing so that we know what we have going forward.
But let us know, give us a few choices and let us know what it's gonna be to toe the line, what it's gonna be, to be the average city, and what's it gonna be like if we're leading the state, so.
And I also feel that we're right at the beginning of renewable energy, really. I mean, we're just at the start. So as renewable energy becomes more and more common, the pricing is just going to get better and better. So let's get into it now. I would need a second for my motion.
What's the motion again?
To have Catherine's office put together firm pricing for 25%, 35%, and 45%
A second.
clean energy and class 1
Okay,
renewables.
second.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question, Vesla?
I do, Mr. Chairman. The last meeting that we had, I heard that we got into the discussion about the changing in terms of the single rate option to a three tiers rate option. I understand that the process with the Department of Public Utility take time. Is that something, Mr. Chairman, plans to do as well, or just stay with the single rate option that we are at this point?
I can give you an update on that. So we consulted with the attorneys at our our brokers firm, and what they determined is that we needed to, in order to amend our aggregation plan, which I believe was something that came out of the last meeting as a desire to do that, we would have to post the plan for the specified period of time. It's currently hanging and it's posted on our website.
Okay.
And so it basically allows us the ability to price in multiple tiered options, including multiple options for greener content. And so that should be finished by the last week in May, and then we can begin the more formal process of getting votes from the city council for us to formally do that, starting the DPU process and getting that online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask Carol, you heard some of the comment we had regarding the seeking a firm prices of 25, 35, 45%, as well as a single rate option to a multi-rate option. What's your recommendation when did you hear that? Because you've been around for a long time. And,
Yeah,
you know.
great question. My 2 cents, just personally, would be that sticking with the single tier is probably what makes sense for you guys right now, because again, you know, folks can go back to the base brown energy by opting out. The opt-up is not substantially utilized in most communities, even with a lot of effort put in. So, you know, as one of my slides said, I think the default is really where the magic is, and that's where I would focus your energy.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody else have any questions? Sure, Jay?
It may be a moot point at this juncture, but I was wondering, you know, in a free market situation, and I understand, Catherine, your point about it would take more time and we'd have to break the contract, which I didn't realize. I thought the consultant contract was over in November, but it's not over for 3 years?
I can get the exact timing on that, but I do know it is a multiple year type of contract for the consultant, but I can get that information.
So that's all relevant, but I guess my question was, why wouldn't we want to reach out and find out, you know, the brokers that are on that sheet over there with all those big numbers, Colonial's not on there. Now, I'm not saying Colonial's not a good broker. I know nothing about this business, other than I know that those guys, Peregrine and Good Energy, are on the table, and Colonial's not. So do we owe it to ourselves to just make sure, you know, if we find out what's involved, if we want it, I guess, first of all, basically, is it possible to talk to another broker?
Well, let me just, at the last meeting, we decided that it was in our best interest to stay with the consultant time-wise. If we broke the contract and went out, it was my understanding, it was gonna be months and longer and.
That's correct. It's
Yeah.
I think it's a very complex process to break contracts, and there are lots of legal ramifications for that. I also think that even though Colonial may not be up there and listed and things like that, they have handled multiple aggregations within the state. It's just that the people that have been the clients for their aggregations have not shown the type of desire that Lowell has shown to increase the renewable content. But the brokers are really more, it's not really, in my opinion, it's not really that one's necessarily better than the other or cares about renewable content more than the other. The broker is willing to do whatever we tell them to do.
Right, we're gonna ask them for.
Right, and
ask them.
it sounds like you're asking them to do specific kinds
Yeah.
of percentages of additional recs, and they are very enthusiastic to do that. And so I think my recommendation, again, would be to remain with the broker, but again, that's something that if you want to initiate to look at the contract, look at changing things, we can do that as well. But again, I think for the immediate future, what I would recommend would be to stay with the consultant right now.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, so I was wondering, would it be possible to maybe sign a shorter term supply contract with a default, maybe like a low default percentages, like maybe a tester, like 5%, something like that, which doesn't really, I think you said 77 cents a month to the average electricity consumer's bill. And then maybe while we were waiting for a new aggregation plan to be written with like, that allowed multiple tiers, maybe in that time frame, we could add the opt-up. So if we signed a 1-year supply contract, something like that, then we could come back and do a multi-tier.
Sure,
Yeah,
Catherine.
I'd be happy to respond to that. I think that that is definitely something that we could do. I think, you know, and the indicative pricing that we got was for multiple sorts of terms from 6 months to 36 months. If, again, it's the will of the city council and you would like to direct the manager's office to really look at something like that, that's an option as well, that we could go out, again, where we have really good pricing, we could go out for something shorter term, like a 12-month contract. You can have like you were talking about, you could have the 5% as sort of a tester. If we wanted to go in further with higher levels of RECs, we can do that as well. Again, the consultant is happy to bid in whatever kinds of terms we want to look at, or we can, what they can do is they can actually ask for pricing for multiple types of terms as well. So again, you'd have more options to look at in terms of that.
I wouldn't be opposed to looking at a short-term contract, but I'm thinking we're gonna get a better deal with the longer contract, though? Is that necessarily true, or?
Yeah, so I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages of both. If you look at the indicative pricing, the best pricing is found in the 36-month contracts in terms of the cost per kilowatt hour. But again, the challenge with that, and it's kind of a balancing type of thing, is sometimes you may get a really good rate when you first start your contract, but then a market falls off, and then your great rate initially doesn't become so great when the market falls off. So I mean, there are risks and benefits of various
When you
kinds of
sign a
things.
contract like that, though, is there any room for getting better rates as they become available, though?
I'm probably out of my area of expertise in there. I think, what you can do is you can go into the market. I know that we had done this on the municipal side of things. If you're not really at the end of your supply contract, but you know that the market's falling off, you can go into the market at that point. Say you had a September start to your contract, you could go in March or February and try to get pricing. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on markets, but I do think
This
there's
is all new
various
to me,
options.
too. I'm learning this as we go, so we can ask these questions, sure.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd be able to explain, or maybe, I think Mark from Colonial is here, so maybe someone could explain our current contract, because it's my understanding that the rate is not fixed and that it has been changing every 6 months or so.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. If my direction isn't clear, I would ask Mark from Colonial to come up. So when we first went out for our aggregation supply around, I believe it was the fall of 2014, we went with what was called a managed product at that time. And so with a managed product, what was thought to be the advantage of that type of product at that time is that you could have some flexibility to lower your rate or things like that if market conditions become favorable. That was the thinking at the time. That didn't turn out to really be necessarily a good product for the city of Lowell with our different types of load that we have and with some different market conditions, including increases in the components that go into your rate. They have what's called a capacity charge, and that's set by the Independent System Operator of New England, and that's been pretty significant over the last few years. There were actually several aggregations within the state that got rid of their aggregations or suspended them temporarily because the capacity charges associated with their contracts wouldn't allow them to be competitive with basic service. So that was something that ended up being a factor. There were some other kinds of factors, but it was primarily the rate varied more because of the type of product it is, which is why we're looking and recommending for the next contract that it be a fixed price, because then that's much more steady, much more stable. Fixed pricing sometimes will have a risk premium built into it, but again, the market is such right now that I think we'd be much better off with that for the city of Lowell with the next contract. I don't know if that answered your question, Michaela, or if you want additional information, but.
Yeah, it does. I just don't understand sometimes how, currently we're paying above the basic service rate for our aggregation, and we don't have, so I understand the risk premium that's built in, but we don't have any extra green content, so I'm curious, how that pricing works, because it should be a group buy discount program, and so, yeah, I was confused at that, so.
Anybody from the audience want to come up and say a couple of things? We only have about 10 or 15 more minutes, so why don't we open it up to some comments? So just come up, state your name for the record, and we'll take some comments?
You know, I feel like we've gotten into the weeds. And I thought what Carol said and where we
Sure,
were
just state
going.
your name for the
Oh, my name's
record,
Neil Dale.
Yep.
And I feel like we've gotten into the weeds here, which is estimating whether we can see into the future and, you know, how much it's going to be and is it going to change and not. And I think one thing Carol said that was very important is that we need to go into this knowing or with a direction of how much green energy we want. That's what they're waiting for you to tell them. And you're saying, well, when do you need this by? No, they want you to tell them what to go for.
Well,
And
right,
like-
but I want to know when the.
I understand, you want some pricing
Yeah.
to know what,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think it's very important also that the default option, if we went with a three-tiered system, then we'd pick the one in the middle as our default. Then people can go down or up. If we wanted to make it that complicated, like Carol says, it really doesn't, nobody opts up. So why don't we stick with what we got? Because that still gives people choice. It allows them to opt out if they want to.
All right, no, it's a good suggestion, thank you. Sure, just come up and state your name for the record and.
John Grossman, 83 Varnum Ave in Lowell. One question and then a comment. The motion is to test out firm pricing on 25%, 35%, and 45% additional, to clarify, because there's already the minimum state standard. This is plus 25, plus 35, plus 45. So we appreciate that. And the comment is, I want to thank you guys for doing this. It's the role of government to correct the problems in the market, and the market is what brought us the climate crisis that we're facing. And so it's the role of governments everywhere to try to address that, in addition to addressing the usual market issues of cost. And it's really, really important, and I'm really glad to see that the leaders of the city of Lowell want to do that and help us do what we can here to ward off the worst impacts of the coming climate crisis by purchasing as much renewable energy as we can. That's a great thing. I would second the point that Neil made earlier, that what really counts is the default option. We all know people get letters in the mail. They usually end up at the bottom of the stairs. Opting up is not going to work at addressing the climate issue. And so we should just go with one tier. And as Carol pointed out, 45% is what it'll take to get us to meet the commitment that the city council made a couple years ago. This is the time to do it. It seems likely that we can do that and save money. They're both important goals, though. We don't want to lose out on our chance to take a step forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yep. Got to be quicker.
Gary Potwin, 463 Lowell, Douglas Road. Two things real fast. Number one,
We have time, take your time.
okay, I am simply unaware at this point of our current broker's capability to do renewable energy stuff. I just simply don't know whether or not they're even capable of doing this, because all I'm aware of so far is all we've done is the minimum standard with the state. So that would be my first question, is I'm unaware of any track record on them, any history on them of doing this. So I'd like to find that out. The second point is, given what's already been said about progress in the renewable energy industries and all of that, is it reasonable to assume that given the usual bathtub curve with most kinds of technologies, including solar and wind, is it reasonable to assume that prices should be coming down pretty quickly in the next several months and years? And so would it make sense to go with a relatively shorter term contract? Because unless I'm completely misunderstanding what I'm seeing on this paper here, it looks like the longer the term of the contract, the more the average person in Lowell will pay. Am I misinterpreting, or is that correct?
I will speak to both of your points. I think to the first point about the broker, it's not that it takes a capability, a specific capability of a broker, because these are all market-based mechanisms. They're bid in by private companies, and private companies are the ones who figure out what the price is to price in additional renewable content. If you look at all the aggregations across the state, most of them have the similar suppliers, and similar suppliers that you will find on that list. The brokers are the same suppliers that bid into other contracts. So I guess I don't know that I would agree with that point. And the second point that you had, I apologize, I didn't write it down.
Was it the short?
Short-term versus long-term. Oh, and the pricing differential. So a little bit, so the indicative pricing, if you look in the column that is highlighted in yellow, that's the actual price per kilowatt hour. And you'll see that they bid in various kinds of terms ranging from 6 months to 36 months. In all of those columns, the 36-month rate is actually the lowest rate for all of the different options. The way that the monthly bill impact, though, can be different, because the monthly bill impact is comparing it to just the renewable portfolio standard. And so depending on where the renewable portfolio standard is versus these other types of things, there would be different monthly bill impacts, but the overall cost per kWh is lowest for the longer term contract. And I hope that that clarified things. I can answer other questions as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tai Chom. I'm from the Highlands. Just want to say I really appreciate each and every one of you, Chairman, Councilor Nguyen, and Councilor Karen. This is very important, and I'm glad that we're doing a lot of research on it. You know, you have someone who's came in and who's been in the field for a long time. Also, would like to suggest too, look, Newton is the 10th largest population in Massachusetts, and we're the 4th. I'm very competitive. If Newton can do 60% total, I believe Lowell could do at least more than that, right? So just got to give kudos. You know, there's a lot of stuff happening, but I believe that if we put our mind, our passion into it, we could accomplish it. That's it.
Thank you. Sure.
Hi, Steve Malagodi, 200 Market Street. I want to thank everyone here for doing such a great job on this and really doing this difficult research. It's a complicated thing. We with 350 Mass Lowell chapter, we think that the resolution as proposed is a good one. We thank you for that. I just want to issue a little word of caution about a multi-tiered system should you decide to go there. And it's an area that perhaps we haven't discussed, but a multi-tiered system in the city of Lowell is going to be very problematic because you're going to have to explain it to the population. And that means in a city like Lowell, which maybe looks different than a city of like Newton or wherever, or any other town that has a multi-tiered system. If you try to explain this multi-tiered option system, you're going to have to do it in at least 4 languages or 5. Who's going to compose that language? Who's going to translate it into Khmer and Thai and Spanish and maybe Swahili and whatever other African? Who's going to do that? That's an important task that would need to be done. We favor the highest possible default rate and a single option as state law requires to opt out. We think it would be really complex, and in the end, that it would be discriminatory to try and do it any other way. Because to explain this in 5 or 6 different languages, frankly, is a real challenge that I'm not sure anybody's up for. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I was gonna make the suggestion, I think we're all in agreement. Why don't we just go to the instead of the 3 options, why don't we stay with the what is it, one option?
The
With-
default.
With the single tier, just to give you direction on where we're going.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do
Yeah.
that. So the clarification that I would ask on that is, I think in the last city council subcommittee meeting, there was a motion to look at adding additional class ones and adding that as additional options.
Right.
We are currently, like I said, we're in the process of amending our aggregation plan to allow for that. And so my question would be, we are in going out to the fall to bid into the contract that begins in October. We have to do a single rate for that. Beyond that, we could continue to amend the aggregation plan as it is to allow for different green rates. It wouldn't require us to do that if we did get that through the DPU, but it would allow you the option, whether you have a 3-tiered option or a 2-tiered option, that doesn't have to be specifically specified within the aggregation plan. But what it would allow is, if you did have the option for multiple rates, it would allow those that are kind of what I would consider even more interested and able to take steps to affect the climate change and the renewable energy content. It would allow opting up to 100%. Again, if you have your aggregation plan amended and you decide you don't want to do the tiers, you don't have to do the tiers, but I would recommend continuing down that path to allow us not only to have a default option that has a higher level of renewable content, but also to allow people within Lowell to go to that higher percentage. And whether, again, you want to do a lower opt-down to protect the most vulnerable, we can do that too. We don't have to do that, but again, if you continue in the amendment of the aggregation process, it allows those additional options, and that's not something that has to be decided today, but for the contract starting in October, it will be just a single rate.
Okay. All right. Karen, did you have a question?
Actually, no.
No, okay. All right, okay. Just come up to the mic, Karen, thanks.
So does this negate the motion you guys just passed, namely saying you were going to look at 25, 35, and 45%?
No, no.
Because it sounded like she was saying you
No, we're
have
still
to
gonna-
stay with a single rate.
Well, we are staying with the single rate for the next contract, is that?
Yes,
Sure.
so the motion is actually to price in 25%, 35%, and 45% additional recs, but that doesn't, and then once you have that pricing information, it gives the decision makers the ability to give more direction. But what as I understand, the motion was to just look at those different percentages so that you can make an informed decision about how you give direction to the manager's office. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. All right, if there's no further questions, thank you, Carol, for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch with you again for some information. All right, thank you. Thank you for everyone for coming down. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Thank you.